Hello, everyone, and welcome to Art Battle in Quebec City. We are just getting ready for round number 1, and we will have 12 incredible artists stepping up to the easels tonight, getting ready to paint live for you and creating incredible masterpieces in only 20 minutes. Our first 6 artists will be painting in round number 1 in just a few minutes. Hello and welcome everyone to Art Battle in Quebec City. We are here tonight with 12 incredible artists, 6 of them in the first round that we're watching right now, painting live in front of this audience and online for all of us here tonight. They have 20 minutes on the clock to go from blank canvas to incredible masterpiece right in front of your eyes, and you, the audience, will vote for which artists you think are best. The top 2 artists, as voted by the audience from round number 1 and from round number 2, will move forward into a 4-artist final and we'll paint again. So we have a really exciting night of live competitive painting in store for you tonight in Quebec City. And here we are in round number 1, our first round. Our first minute has elapsed, and we have our wildcard artist who is sitting on the floor and working on the floor that way. Shirtless, very connected to his work, very involved in the creation of this piece. And here we are, I believe this is Marie-Julie. And we can see that Marie is, I believe, creating a tree, potentially a nature landscape here. We have quite a lot of white going on into the background here, and so this is telling me that this artist is going to be using quite likely a wet-on-wet technique, which is pretty well known in the landscape art community as something that kind of is inspired or was taught by Bob Ross and is a great way to help paint slide very easily on the canvas when working with brushes and palette knives. So lots of rapid brushwork here from this artist, still working on creating this white kind of slate to be able to work on top of. And here we are moving on to our next artist. I believe that this is Nolan, and Nolan is known for creating these kind of chaotic, childlike pieces in that they have a lot of whimsy in them. There's some influence, I think, from Basquiat going on as well, and is known for being very playful and super, super bright. So we can see some of that drawing technique in there already, and we can see the vibrancy of the palette that Nolan is using already. Getting some of that nice purpley pink fuchsia down, and now laying down some red and orange beside it. And we are headed over to our second section of artists. At easel number 2, we have Esteban with this face over here, and I believe that this is actually Marie-Julie, and she is working on a figure. It looks like the figure is kind of starting to cascade back into space. There's definitely some great movement going on in this figure, and very abstracted at this point. A lot of great energy and movement going on here. We can see that she's using this smaller brush to kind of define the outline. And here we are with Esteban. And Esteban is creating this very emotive portrait. We're getting definitely a great emotive quality here from this face with using these kind of desaturated tones of these grays and a little bit of a washy technique where the paint has been thinned with water to kind of tone out that color. And lots of rapid brushwork going on here as well. Very painterly. I can tell that this piece is going to be very expressive already. And Esteban is known for using almost a cubist approach in the way that he's simplifying forms. And I believe that this is Lynn here. And we can see that Lynn is creating this super, super bright background Lots of texture going on here. We're having some difficulty seeing the content of the canvas just because of this light here, but we can definitely see that there's a lot of great layering techniques going on there. Very harmonious palette in that we can see these kind of ultramarine blues and ceruleans playing within there as well. And back to Esteban here. And we can see that Esteban has actually taken the canvas off of the easel and is drawing very rapidly on top of that, I believe, with some oil pastel. Moving through the crowd here, we have 7 minutes elapsed of our time. Once again, these artists have 20 minutes only on the clock to go from blank canvas to finished piece. So we are nearing the halfway mark here. Head on over to artbattle.com/vote. That is where you will get registered to vote for your favorite artist. Our wildcard artist here, still down on the ground, really going super expressive, leaning into kind of this chaotic approach of this sprinkling of paint technique. So this artist is using gravity very much to their advantage and getting very tactile as well with these handprints and this finger painting technique. I know that the crowd is going to love seeing that. The audience always loves when an artist gets very physically involved in their work. It's definitely an addition to the performance aspect of art battles, so I think that the crowd is really going to enjoy this artist work. And here we are back with Nolan, and Nolan has done something really interesting compositionally here, and has split the canvas almost into 3 distinct paintings within this single canvas. So really interesting compositional technique here. We have brighter quadrants with these figurative drawings going on, very, very expressive, abstract expressionist piece right in the top corner there as well, blending kind of those rustier reds into some of these brighter colors and really leaning into the darkness in that area of the painting, and then embracing this kind of light and almost like a childlike wonder in these abstracted drawings here. And here we see, I believe that this is Julie Marchand, and Julie is working on this tree here, definitely taking advantage of that wet on wet technique that we were seeing, and on that wet on wet technique that we were seeing, and we can see that these smaller trees that are in the background have been applied over top of that white paint, and you can see the way the paint has kind of slipped over top and is very buttery. A wet on wet technique using that kind of white paint underneath often can allow the acrylic paint to behave more like an oil, make it more slippery and easily blendable. And here we have these Christmas ornaments hanging from the trees as well. And back with our wildcard artist, leaning into the abstract expressionism of this piece. And now we're getting some tape action as well. Always love seeing tape at Art Battle. It ends up being almost like a secret weapon. The crowd really loves and appreciates seeing tape being introduced because it provides all of these textural elements, and you can also paint on top of it and peel it off to reveal what's underneath. This artist is using a Scotch tape. Here we are with Lynn, and Lynn again creating on this figure. I think that our lighting is blowing out some of the painting. Now we can see the light has changed a little bit, and we can see the curves that have been added to this body, the different levels of shade, and the highlights being used to indicate where light is falling on the body. So we have the chest here, and we've got some beautiful rich sienna tones going throughout the midsection. And also looks like some white paint being applied into the arms here as well. So I'm wondering if there is going to be an angelic quality that comes into this figurative painting. Back with Esteban here. And this portrait just keeps getting better and better each time we come across it. There's been some really beautiful highlights that have been added into this portrait, and we're seeing the way that the light is falling across the face and just kind of cresting on the cheekbone there and also on the side of the forehead. And I'm loving how many different layers of color there are here in this portrait, but it also doesn't feel overpainted. And I think at this point, it might be getting into the territory of being able to say that I think that this is a self-portrait by Esteban. I'm recognizing his hair and mustache within the portrait itself also, which is very interesting. And here we are with Marie Julie, and Marie is really well known for doing these absolutely stunning, super colorful animal portraits that incorporate a lot of texture, often are using kind of galaxies as the background, so we're getting a surreal element as well. And here we can see that Marie Julie is painting a giraffe, and we have that beautiful graphic quality of this very clean execution of the animal and then a more expressive painterly background. Looks like our wildcard artist here is adding some collage elements. I'm seeing potentially pieces of fabric or paper that are being added onto the piece as well to give it that 3D quality. This piece has a lot of performative energy within it, and I think that the crowd is going to be very excited about that. Back with Nolan here, and Nolan, we can see, again, is sticking to this 3-quadrant or 3-section painting and is working now into the top section, which previously was almost completely abstract. So now looks like we're getting a little bit of that narrative in there. We have that very playful addition of the sun in the top corner. And I just love the way that Nolan is really embracing this kind of childlike quality and bringing us a lot of whimsy in this piece as well. Back with Julie here, and we can see that Julie has done some very interesting compositional things here. We can see that she has her main tree, the tree that's in the foreground, is very much over to the side, but is still taking up the central focus of the canvas by using that branch to move forward into the middle of the canvas, and then using these ornaments to cascade from it and bringing these small elements hanging off of it, making the whole composition seem a lot larger. So it's smaller pieces that are taking up more space compositionally. And then we have the background trees are kind of providing that balance there. This piece has a really good, a lot of good opportunity for eye movement throughout. We can also see that Esteban is having a really fantastic time creating all of these different layered elements. Some really fantastic blending of styles here from Mary Julie with this kind of illustrative approach to the animal portrait. We will be back for round number 2 of Art Battle in Quebec City in just a few moments. We're going to have another 6 artists stepping up to the easels, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what they create. We have Angela Jane Lavender, Allison White, Selena Clement, Cecilia Chan, and Camille Panchard-Lavalle coming up in round number 2 in just a few minutes. Art Battle in Quebec City. And we are off for round number 2 of Art Battle in Quebec City. Here we are with Camille, and Camille is looks like she is doing some drawing elements to start off her painting here. I believe that she's holding a marker. And Camille is really well known for creating these just beautiful, dark, kind of surreal compositions. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we're going to be seeing at the easel from her tonight as well. And here we are with Antoine. And Antoine is introducing this turquoise color coming up from the bottom in our first minute only, not sure where he's going with this piece yet. I feel like it's going to end up being something within the natural world, just the way that he's applying these. It's giving me almost like a foliage kind of vibe. I feel like it could potentially end up being some leaves, but again, very early to call it, and such an abstracted approach right now. That's just kind of where my mind is going. And here we are with Cecilia Chan, and Cecilia has actually painted in Art Battle Ottawa before as well, and she has just this incredible style, mostly painting portraits and working in almost a painterly kind of pointillism, very, I think, influenced by Surratt, where we're getting these dobs of color, and then backing up and seeing the way that all of those colors harmonize. And right now we can see Cecilia is working off of a reference, looks like potentially a reference of a statue. And heading over to our second group of artists. Looks like we have a really packed house tonight as well in Quebec City, so lots of excitement there. I know that the artists are definitely going to be reacting to the energy of the crowd, and I'm so excited for that. It really is such a unique experience performing in Art Battle. I believe that this is Angela Jane Lavender, and looks like we are being treated to a skull portrait right now. I can see the skull that she has taped up beside her easel, and is taking this very painterly approach. We're getting kind of the angles of this skull laid out in the way that she's painting right now, with this very graphic quality of the black being used to frame. And I think that that is a great technique for Art Battle as well, because this piece is really going to translate from farther away as well as up close, because of all of the high contrast components that the use of this black is giving this piece. And here we are with Allison White. And Allison is well known for creating these beautiful stylized portraits of women, very illustrative. And so we're 4 minutes in here and having some challenges witnessing the painting that's being created on the easel, just from a lighting standpoint, I think. But I'm sure that as we shift over and get a different perspective of her easel, that we'll have that painting revealed to us. We're getting kind of that natural world colliding into this portrait, and I really love it. We're getting that almost like a laurel perched on the head of the figure here. And now we have the opportunity to see Angela Jane's piece a little bit better, and we can see the addition of this super, super vibrant yellow here into the higher points of the skull being used as that highlight factor. And we can see that she's added some red into the hollows of the eyes as well. And I think that that's going to be adding quite a lot of depth there. And here we are with Selena. And Selena, we can see, has her reference taped up as well. And the creation of this portrait is just totally stunning. I love the use of that cerulean blue as the drawing element to kind of create that map that she is painting on top of. And this skull here is just gorgeous. I actually think that I made a mistake in which artist that was. I think that the artist painting the skull is actually Selena. Heading back over to our second group of artists. And here we are with Cecilia. And yes, it definitely looks like she's executing that statue painting, and it's turning out really beautifully. We've got a great sense of composition here with the bottom of the statue starting just off center at the bottom of the canvas, and then creating this kind of diagonal line that's really helping to communicate a sense of scale of the piece, really getting a sense of that majesty of the sculpture and how it takes up space. Ooh, and the addition of this blue here, just adding that pop of color is really going to set off the otherwise fairly neutral execution that she's got going on right now. And here we are with Camille, and Camille is, I think that this is going to be a floating person. I'm getting the sense that this is figurative and that this long area leading into the red splash that we're looking at are legs cascading down. And Camille uses scale in a really interesting way in her work. She often is doing her figures quite small, but allowing them to kind of take up space in this really interesting way and just command the space. And the way that she's using black all around the figure as well is giving almost a sense of isolation. And so very interesting kind of dark surreal elements there from Camille. And here we are back with Antoine. And looks like we are getting a fairly abstracted face going on here. Lots of angularity in this line work. So my initial guess of the foliage was definitely off. And we're definitely into this very expressive, abstracted portrait territory. And we can see that he's written something on the canvas and is now completely obliterating it by layering over top. So I think that this piece is going to end up coming through in almost a collage-like fashion, and I'm looking forward to that for sure. Here we are heading back over, and we can see that Selena's skull is really coming together in such a strong way. There are so many colliding color elements within it that it's just taking on this really unique energy. And we can see that she's fanning it now in an attempt to get some of the paint to dry. That's always an absolute challenge at Art Battle is oftentimes when artists are working in their studio, you have time to let your layers dry in between applications of paint. And although acrylic is a paint that dries very, very quickly, it doesn't dry instantly in that 20-minute mark. And so these artists are really competing with their ability to layer, and it can be definitely a challenge not to get into the mud, as we call it, which is where you begin unintentionally mixing colors. It looks like Selena is keeping some really nice clean yellows here, and leaning into that highlight quality there as well with some of the white going into the high points of that skull face. And back with Allison here, and we're getting this gorgeous rosiness coming through in the cheeks of this portrait here. And the stance of this figure has almost a reverent quality. It's definitely kind of reading like a contemporary take on Renaissance portraiture. We have almost that secretive smile that would make you think of the Mona Lisa a little bit, just from the stance and from the facial expression that this figure is holding. And Back over to Angela Jane Lavender, and this portrait is coming together so beautifully. The eye connection from this portrait is just really wonderful. We have kind of the figure is looking off to the side, almost in the distance. It's giving you this sense of wistfulness. And there's also this beautiful painterly quality of the way that Angela has introduced the roses in here, very abstracted. Lots of water in the application here, and so we're getting these really beautiful painterly drips as well. And Angela is doing a great job balancing the warmth of the portrait and the skin tone with the coolness in the shadows, and that balance of warmth and coolness, I think, is just adding such a great sense of character and such a great sense of depth in this piece. And now we can see that Allison is starting to introduce some of those background elements, really kind of expanding the composition and creating a wholeness there. With 6.5 minutes left on the clock, now is a good time to remind you to go to artbattle.com/vote. That is where you will be choosing your favorite artist from this round, and the top 2 artists as voted by the audience will be joining the top 2 artists from round number 1 in a 4-artist final showdown. So make sure that you get those votes in at artbattle.com/vote. Here we are with Cecilia, and here are some of the application techniques that I was talking about that we know from Cecilia. This kind of daubing of color, these very pronounced strokes that just really allow the eye to kind of dance over all of these colors, and that are very bright in their own, but as we take a little bit of distance, we see the colors kind of melding together. And so that is a very interesting painterly technique, and one that we have come to know really well from Cecilia as well. Here we are back with Camille, and still gazing at this portrait that is kind of floating, just floating a few inches off of what looks like a glowing rock, and it's providing a really good sense of tension there by having just that small point of disconnection, that little centimeter of black between the toes of the figure and this rock here. That's what's really communicating to me that this figure is kind of otherworldly, floating, and we're also getting this kind of sense of glow from the way that Camille has layered the color and is blending the white into the black of the background, just giving us that little hint of gradient that communicates that glow. Back with Antoine here, and this piece has evolved so much since we saw it last time. Great use of expressive brushwork here, and we've got kind of these this chaotic building of color and building of layers here, but also still with some of the canvas peeking through, and I think that that's adding a really interesting energy to this piece. All of the works created tonight are also available for silent auction at that same link, artbattle.com/vote. So not only will you be choosing your favorite artists from tonight, but also we would like to invite you to bid on the work. You don't need to be in the room to take one of these paintings home. We will ship them to you. Some great finishing work from Cecilia there. Heading back over to our second group of artists. I can only imagine how this experience is for the crowd as well, in kind of switching between these two camps of artists. The energy that that Selena here has brought into the skull is just palpable. We're really getting this super graphic quality with all of these saturated colors and high use of contrast. And these final additions of details now by these artists in the last 2 minutes. We're seeing Selena adding in a little bit of red into the top forehead there, but a very clean line, so I'm wondering where she's going with that. And here we are back with Allison, and this piece really does remind me of the Mona Lisa, just from the stance of the character, the bareness of the shoulders, the expression, even going into, of course, the background is very abstracted in this piece and is more communicating foliage, but just from a color perspective, getting those blues in the background as well is still evocative of that Mona Lisa. So great job from Allison here. And so happy to be encountering the final strokes from Angela Jane here. This piece is just so wonderfully emotive. We're really getting a lightness from the character here, and some absolutely stunning eye contact. And loving the looseness of this piece. It's really well executed in that all of our light and shadow is in the right place. It's where it needs to be. The proportions are on, but the piece is still very loosely executed. We have a lot of really buttery paint strokes and some unexpected movement going on as well. And I have to say that Angela Jane has done just a fantastic job of blending this kind of expressionist, emotive style with this just wonderful execution. In just a few minutes, we will be announcing the results of our voting and who our top 4 artists will be, and who will be going into the final round of this edition of Art Battle Quebec City. So stay tuned. Round number 3, our final round, starting in just a few minutes. We'll have our final 4 artists with another 20 minutes on the clock and a blank canvas on the easels. And our final round for Art Battle in Quebec City has just commenced. Our finalists have been announced. We have from round number 1, Marie Julie moved forward and Esteban. And from round number 2, our finalists were Angela Jane and Allison. So right now we are watching, I believe, Angela Jane, and she is creating this green color field, which is going to be surrounding what I can only assume is going to be another stunning portrait. We can see a little bit of a peek of her reference just behind the easel there, and I think that we're going to be treated to another just gorgeous, emotive female portrait. So really looking forward to that as the round unfolds. We have another 20 minutes on the clock for this final round, and I gotta say, it is tough when you are an Art Battle finalist. Of course, these artists always want to get to the final, but you've expended so much creative energy and performance already, and then you get voted into the final and you're asked to do it all over again. So we really appreciate these artists bringing their courage and creativity to the easel. Here we are checking out Allison, and a much darker composition already starting from Allison. We have this dark blue going into this kind of indigo purple color, and we're getting this spherical composition happening. I'm wondering if that's going to be potentially a halo around another portrait. I would love to see another kind of art historical referential work from Allison as well. We can see that Angela Jane has again gone in with that cerulean blue as her kind of sketching color to establish the proportions of the face. And I think that that is such an interesting color to choose as your base layer, and as kind of your sketching element. I think that it really shines through and creates a great opportunity for color contrast to build on top of that. Heading over to our other two finalists here, we have Esteban on easel number 2, and Esteban is getting very physical with this painting. A lot of handwork being done. He is rubbing some blue pigment into the canvas right now, and it's interesting seeing this really aggressive paint application technique being employed with such a soft blue. And we're also getting a little bit of that kind of sand color at the bottom. So I'm wondering if from Esteban we are going to end up seeing a landscape potentially. And over here with Marie-Julie, and we can tell already what Marie-Julie is working on. We've got another whimsical animal portrait happening, definitely a zebra here, and I have to commend her because this is already turning out really well. I think a difficulty that a lot of artists have, especially in Art Battle, is with these horse portraits, because the proportions on a horse in their face are so complex, and are kind of a scale that we are not necessarily familiar with in the same way that it would be intuitive to paint a human face. And we can see that Marie-Julie is doing just a fantastic job of laying out those proportions now, and getting this portrait well underway. With 5 minutes elapsed, a lot has happened on her canvas already, and I love that we're getting this kind of color play of the stripes being in this gorgeous blue as well. So switching over to Esteban, and Esteban is on the floor now, again with this very aggressive painting technique and use of his hands and fingers to blend in all of this color. And right now the technique is working really well for him. We've got actually this beautiful, subtle sky and soft clouds kind of being formed with this very aggressive technique. So very interesting application there. And of course, Marie-Julie with these beautiful blue stripes, and the introduction of that violet color as well, providing just a little bit of warmth, and letting us know that we're in for some color surprises here. Making our way through the crowd over to our second set of artists. It looks like there's so much energy going on in the room today. We have lots of people close up to the easels, just really appreciating the creative performance of these artists tonight. So yes, we are getting another female portrait from Angela Jane. And again, with that color contrast, just the beautiful use of that sienna and yellow color, very close up to that cerulean blue that she's used as her kind of drawing element. And it's just really providing this beautiful, beautiful contrast. These colors are of a similar level of saturation, but the way that she's placed them is how they're communicating that contrast. And bringing in, I think, probably some of those red florals as well, which is going to be nice because it'll tie in Angela Jane's first round qualifying piece, and kind of help to make this second portrait almost a companion piece. So really, really looking forward to seeing how that continues to evolve. Back with Allison here. And we are getting this framing, this circular framing here of this portrait. The head of this portrait has ended up exactly where I was hoping that it would end up being framed almost by this halo. And we can see that Allison is building out a really stunning portrait using a little bit of a heavier painting technique than we first saw in her first qualifying round painting. That one was perhaps executed with a little bit of a lighter hand. And so this heavier painting application technique, we're actually getting a lot more depth and light and shadow that is happening in the face. And I think that Allison has stepped up her game here and she's painting just a little bit faster. So we have 8 minutes elapsed in round number 3, our final round, and Allison is off to an absolutely great start. I think that she's her time management is going to be a real strength for her here tonight. If you are just joining us now, we are going to be voting for the single winner of tonight. There will be one Art Battle Quebec City champion announced tonight. And this is our final round of the cream of the crop of the artists of tonight. All 4 of these artists competed in qualifying rounds earlier this evening and were voted forward into the final. And now they're painting again for a chance to win. So not only are they hoping to be crowned the winner of tonight's event, but the winner of tonight's event will also be moving forward into the Quebec City finals, which allows for those artists to be moving into higher levels of competition. So they'll be painting against all of the artists who have won in Quebec City this season, and perhaps some regional finalists as well. And then the winner of that will be moving forward into the Art Battle Canada National Championship. So it really is high stakes, each individual event. Back with Marie-Julie here, and the addition of this orange is just setting this piece off so well. A really great color contrast and a true treat for the eyes. The way that this blue and purple is just vibrating against the orange here is just really, really wonderful. I know that this piece has just a gorgeous graphic quality and that it's going to be communicating really well from up close because it's executed very well, but also from a distance. It's going to be very recognizable for the crowd. It's bright, it's exciting, and I think that that is a great strategy that Marie-Julie is employing in her final round piece. Her qualifying round piece was great, but a little bit smaller in its compositional focus with the giraffe just being smaller on the canvas. So this approach of really blowing up that composition and increasing the size of the animal and then adding this super, super bright contrasting color as the background, I think the crowd is really going to respond well to that. Back over here with Angela Jane. And we have a beautiful soft expression coming from the portrait here, and a little bit more direct eye contact than the previous qualifying round piece. And I love the way that Angela Jane is adding in those kind of purpley lowlights into the hair here. It's really just kind of giving us that 3D effect that that the hair has its own kind of movement. Perhaps the wind is playing through it a little bit with those brush strokes just trailing off slightly. And we have definitely a simplified hand up against the face of the portrait, and that could be potentially a challenge for Angela Jane. Hands are really, really difficult to execute, and so you really just need to capture the gesture of the hand and the general shape. And so that is going to be Angela Jane's challenge, I think, for the next 7 minutes and 30 seconds. That is really where I think that her efforts are going to end up being focused. So what I had originally kind of assumed would be a take on like a Byzantine saintly portrait with this halo has actually turned into an astronaut painting and is really cool, bringing that fantasy. And we can see that there are branches and foliage coming out of the eyes of the portrait. So really bringing us into this kind of surreal space. Allison is doing a great job of creating a narrative here. And the use of this lime green is just really jumping off of the canvas and creating that point of light that our eye really wants to be drawn towards, and a great point of contrast against that super dark background. Heading over now to Esteban, and this piece has evolved in so many different ways. And as we had some pieces earlier tonight that had that kind of art historical referential quality, we now see that Esteban has painted the bust of Venus, the very famous statue with its head and arms missing. And then we have this Samo crown that is floating atop of the statue in the sky there, which is definitely a Basquiat reference. And then we have the elongated legs of this creature that he's working on right now, which is definitely a Salvador Dali reference. So some really interesting kind of inside jokes, or not jokes, but inside references to be picked apart in this painting, and giving us those little gems. And definitely this piece is going to be a conversation starter for sure. Kind of picking out all of these different referential pieces of this work. Fantastic evolution by Marie-Julie in this piece here. Loving the addition of the yellow into that orange. It's really bringing home that this piece is a rainbow piece, and she's done such a great job with the way that she's laid down the color in terms of placement, in that it doesn't read just like a rainbow. It's reading in this very kind of technicolor way. All of the colors are blending nicely into each other with all of these different gradients. We've got little hits of green kind of lending themselves into the yellow there, and there's just a really subtle, beautiful use of blending in this piece. And now we can see that she's adding in the whites in the stripes here, and has waited until the last possible moment to add these in. And I think that that was a smart strategy, because throwing it back to the beginning of the round, we saw that the very first strokes that Marie-Julie put in were the stripes of this zebra. And so adding in the white at the very last moment has allowed the blue and purple of those stripes the longest possible time to dry. So I think that she will be avoiding getting into muddy territory there. So good time management from Marie-Julie there. There's definitely a softness in this portrait from Angela Jane. And I think a lot of that softness is just contained in the slight downturning of the face and the shadow that is playing on the chin. I think that there's a lot of softness there and subtlety, and just a really beautiful portrait overall. And again, with these flowers and the way that that Angela Jane has allowed the flowers to drip and to just kind of take up some of that white space that's in the shirt, I think is really helping to harmonize the composition and just take up enough space so that the white of the shirt doesn't seem like too much negative space. It doesn't seem unfinished because of those drips that are just kind of connecting everything. Back with Allison here, and we are in our final 2 minutes. And we can see that she's added some stars to the background. And so we're getting a sensation of this being kind of in a galaxy as well. And just looking at how calm Allison is, there's a lot of confidence in this piece and the execution that she has achieved so far. Its strangeness is so wonderful. You're getting that kind of earthiness of the foliage and the green, and then you're getting that contrast of the sensation of being in space with the astronaut helmet and the darkness of the sky and the suggestion of those stars in kind of this galaxy. Rounding down into our final minute, and these artists are just adding in their tiniest details, little hits of highlight. And you can see that the crowd is just absolutely wrapped with attention on these artists. The votes are being counted, and our winner announcement is coming in just a few minutes. Stay tuned to find out who is the winner of tonight's art battle in Quebec City. A huge congratulations to Allison White, our winner of tonight's event in Quebec City, Art Battle Quebec City champion. We will be welcoming Allison White to the Quebec City finals happening in the spring or summer of 2023, and we cannot wait to have you back at the easel. A huge congratulations to all of our artists tonight. It takes a lot of creativity and courage to step up to the easel at Art Battle, and we are so grateful. And thank you to everyone who joined us watching on the stream tonight, and of course to our team on the ground in Quebec City. A fantastic show, and we will be back very soon. Keep an eye on artbattle.com/events for event updates.